Hi guys, in this video, we'll go over chapter 11, PowerPoint, so measuring the cost of living. All right, now first of all, there's something called a consumer price index. Some of you probably heard it before. Many of you, this sounds very new. So consumer price index is just the, let me show the definition. So it measures the cost of living of a typical consumer. Imagine how much you pay for your budget. So you have your rent, your car insurance, your gasoline, your food and utilities. So everything altogether, that is measured in our consumer price index. And the reason why we have that is that we can keep track of how much our consumer cost of living is, and also can use our CPI to measure how much is our inflation. Now, there's also something called a PPI. PPI stands for the Producer Price Index. That measures the cost of production for a typical producer. So, so imagine your companies such as your Apple, your Ford, your Chevy, your even HEB. So for all those companies, how much it costs them to produce their good. That's measured by the Producer Price Index. Now, CPI is very good to measure our current inflation. PPI is very good to measure our future inflation, because when companies are paying a higher price now when they produce it, in the future when they sell this good, those prices will be higher too. So PPI can be used to measure our future inflation. And then there's also something called a COLA. It stands for Cost of Living Adjustment. This is very important for any long-term contract. So guys, imagine this. Imagine I will hire you to take notes for me. So every class you take notes for me, I will pay you $100. Now that sounds pretty nice, right? Especially for a class that's only an hour and a half. For $100, that's very good. Now, let's suppose we sign a long-term contract. We're going to sign a 40-year contract. And for the 40 years, every class you take notes for me, I will pay you $100. Now, would that still be a very good deal? Now you got to think about it, right? So now it's a very good deal, right? So right now, if you pay $100 for every hour and a half, that's a very good deal. But imagine 40 years later, so toward the end of the contract, when I only pay you $100, while everything else in the economy is very expensive, that $100 will worth less in 40 years later. So for this long-term contract, that if we have a fixed price of only $100, that is only good in the current time, but in the future, that money it worth much less, because everything else is much more expensive. So for this, we need something called a COLA. So COLA is like an automatic adjustment on the contract price. So that usually COLA is based on inflation. So anytime inflation goes up, and by the way, remember inflation, that's the average price of everything else in the economy. So normally when inflation goes up, COLA will automatically increase how much the contract price. And then for many of people who are working right now, by end of the year, they have a little increase in the salary, like a 2%. That is not a raise. That is a COLA. Because for many companies, what they do, they will increase your salary pace with our inflation. So that's not a raise. What that is, it's just an inflation adjustment. Okay, so that's COLA. All right. And then now for this chapter, you need to know how to calculate our CPI. There are a total of 5 steps. Now the first step is to fix the basket. So remember, one thing to remember is that CPI is the cost cost of living for typical consumers. So for this basket over here, think about when you go to your grocery stores. So go to Walmart, go to Kroger. You have a little basket, right? And then you go and put all the stuff you need in the basket. That is the first step. That's your fix your basket. Now, second, you need to find out how much is the prices for each item in the basket. I mean, for most people, when you go to grocery shopping, you look at the prices. You see how much there are. I mean, if they're too expensive, forget about it. I'm not buying it, but they're cheaper, I'll buy it. So that's the second step. Find the prices. On your quiz, on your test, I will give you the first 2 steps. So I will give you how much, what is the basket, how many items in the basket. I will tell you how much the prices are, and then those are given to you. So your first step, which is the third step over here, your first step is to find out how much is the basket cost. So this is like, you know how you go to your cash register to check out, you put all the you put all the stuff you have in the basket on the little belt, and then the cashier will ring everything up, and by the end will give you will tell you how much in total. Now that total number, that's your third step, to find what's the basket cost. So take how much item you have in the basket times the price of each item, and then add it together. Okay, so it's like P1 times P2 plus Q1 plus Q1 times Q2, and then da da da. Okay, so basically to add up all the costs you have. Okay, so quantity times prices, and then add up everything all together. Now step 4, which is where the CPI come from. So to find CPI, now sometimes in your quiz, the question wouldn't call it the CPI. The question might be asking for, find what is the price index. That is your CPI. Okay, they're the same thing. That's a ugly eye. All right, so to find your price index or CPI, the formula is your cost of basket in current year divided by the cost of basket in your base year. So again, this is very similar to chapter 10. So in the question, it will tell you which year is the base year. So you guys need to remember that. So read the question carefully. Make sure you know which is the base year. Because if you get the base year wrong, you'll get everything wrong. And I think for the last test, there's one girl in my class. She misread the question, and then the base year was like the 3rd year, but she assumed the base year was the 1st year, and then she got those 6 questions wrong. I mean, that's like 18 points on the test. Okay, so guys, make sure to read the question carefully. Know which year is the base year. That is very important information. All right, and the last step, to find inflation, we're going to take our CPI for this year minus CPI for last year divided by CPI for last year. It's very similar to your deflator formula for inflation from chapter 10. Remember, we use the deflator for this year minus deflator for last year divided by deflator for last year and times 100%. So your inflation formula is pretty much similar between CPI and deflator. It's always this year minus last year and divided by last year. Okay. All right. So let's say we have example over here. So for our basket, we have 4 pizza and 10 latte. And then remember over here is the prices of each item. So remember, your first step is to find out how much is the basket value. So we're going to take the price of each item times the quantity of each item. So for 2010, we're going to take the price of pizza, which is $10, times the quantity for pizza, which is 4, and then plus the price of latte times the quantity of latte. So 10 times 4 plus 2 times 10, and then your basket value is 60. Okay, and I do the same thing for all the years. So 2011, we take the price of pizza times the quantity for pizza. Now do the same thing. Price for latte times the quantity for latte. Okay, so your answer should be 69, and then do the same formula, same concept. The basket value for 2012 is going to be 78, and then next step is to find out what is the CPI. Remember, we need to know what the base year is, right? So make sure you read the question carefully. It's getting worse. So we need to know what the base year. So make sure you read the question carefully. Each question will tell you which is the base year. So for this question, our base year is 2010. So here is our base year. Now we're going to find out how much the CPI for 2010, CPI for 2011, and then CPI for 2012. Now, 2010, we're going to use, remember, is the current year basket value divided by base year. That's the current year for 2010, which is 2010. So basket value is 60. The base year is 2010 too, so that's 60 also, and times 100. The CPI is 100 for 2010. And then let's remember, the CPI for the base year is always 100. Remember the deflator from last chapter, that for the base year is always 100. Same thing over here. So the base year CPI is also 100. Okay, and then to find 2011, we use 2011 CPI. So 2011 basket value. So 69 divided by 16. Remember, that's your base year. This number here, this will never change. 60 is always the base year, and times 100. And this should be 115. And last step, we're going to do 78. Again, divided by 60, that's our base year, times 100. And this will be 130. Okay, so that's your CPIs. And the last step is to find inflation. Now, inflation is always between 2 years. So we need to find out what's the inflation for 2013 and then inflation for 2012. I mean, wait, what am I doing? 2012, 2011. Now we cannot do inflation for 2010 because we don't know what 29 is. Okay, so it's always between 2 years. So for 2011, this will be 115 minus 100. So it's the 2011 CPI minus 2010 CPI, and then divided by 2010 CPI, and times 100%. Okay, so once you finish, this should be a 15% inflation. And then for the next one, for 2012, we do the same thing. So we're going to do 2012 CPI, which is 130, minus 2011 CPI, divided by 2011 CPI, and times 100%. So this would be a 13.04%. Okay, so guys, put in the numbers in calculator, make sure these numbers are right. I just memorize all the numbers. Okay, all right, so that's how you do it. Guys, I guarantee you, you will see questions like this on your homework and on quiz. Okay, so make sure know how to do this. So first step, find the basket value. Use the price times quantity to find the basket value. Second step, find CPIs. So use your current year basket value divided by the base year basket value. And then last step, find inflation. Is this year CPI minus last year CPI divided by last year CPI and times 100%. Okay. All right. So that's that. Let's keep going. You guys can do this by yourself. It's not that hard. Okay. You know what? No, I don't want to do that. Hey, you know what? Let me do this. Let me teach you guys how to do this on Excel, because Excel can really help you guys in this type of questions. Okay. Show me Excel. All right, I don't need this anymore. And I don't need this anymore. Could we change it individually? All right. All right, we can type in the numbers. Okay, so we're gonna do, we have 2010, 2011, 2012. Here's the price of beef. Price of, okay, so $4, $5, $9, $4, 5, and then quantities. So quantity for chicken, for beef is 10 pounds. So 10 pounds for beef, and then 20 pounds for chicken. All right, so we're gonna find out what is the basket value, what is the CPI, and also what is the inflation for the last 2 years. Okay, so let's do basket value first. For basket value, this will be the price of beef times the quantity of beef, and then plus the price of chicken times the quantity of chicken. Okay, that will be 120. All right, so it'll be the same formulas. So I'm gonna do a little trick over here. I'm gonna put because this quantity never change, so I'll put a dollar sign in front of B5. So dollar sign in front of B, dollar sign in front of 5, and then for C5, same thing, dollar sign in front of C, dollar sign in front of 5. So this quantity here wouldn't change when I copy the formulas. All right, so still 120, and then let's go to this, drag it down. There, so that's your basket value, okay? And then next CPIs. For CPI, I'm gonna do the current year basket value. Wait, which is the base year? Let's find out which is the base year. That's very important. Show me base year. Where's my PowerPoint? Here we go. All right, so base year is 2010, okay? So 2010 is our base year. So here is our base year. Let me highlight it so I'll remember this. That's the base year. Okay, so CPI equals to your current year basket value, 120, divided by base year, which is also 120, and then times 100. So again, for base year, it's always 100. Okay, so it'll be the same formula, but we're gonna make sure that this dividing by D2, the second D2, that's our base year, so that will never change. So let's put a dollar sign in front of D and dollar sign in front of 2, and then click on it and drag it down. And that's our CPIs. Okay, and last step to find inflation. All right, so inflation, first I'm gonna do 2011. So I'm gonna do this year. CPI minus last year CPI divided by last year CPI. Okay, so that's 0.25, so like 25%. You know what? We already have it, so let's drag it down. So 25% for the 2011, and then 40% for 2012. And then, guys, you might want to make sure what percentage this is. And then, guys, once you finish this, remember this. The difference between percentage and the decimal is all just two decimal places. So once you have the decimal, just move it back two place. So 0.25 will give you 25%, and then 0.4 move back to place, that will give you 40%. And then on Excel, just do right click, format cell. I'm gonna do percentage, and there we go. This percentage. Okay, so that's how you do this kind of problems on Excel. And then, guys, if, whenever you have access to computers, try this because this really help you. Really help you to make sure get the accurate numbers. Because if you here's the thing. If you try to do this by hand, if you make one little mistake, everything else after that will be all wrong. Okay, so by putting everything on Excel, it's more reliable, and then you can check your works too. So if you click on this 150, click on the formula bar, it shows you where all the numbers come from. So it's easy way to check your answers, make sure they're right. Okay, all right. And guys, another thing about this little Excel exercise, for many of you guys in business majors, you will need this because for many companies they do use Excel extensively. Okay, so get familiar with Excel. All right, let's continue. Okay, so we did this. This is important. Okay, now you guys don't have to know all the numbers, but this. Go back. This you need to know. Transportation. So the top three spending category for a consumer is housing, which is usually number one. So 41% of spending goes to housing. Transportation, 17%. And then but food and beverage, 15%. And then, guys, also keep in mind that this percentage or this distribution is not the same across the entire country. Some part of the country, especially if you're looking at like New York City or San Francisco, people are spending way more on housing and a little bit less on transportation. Now, for people in Texas, we're going to spend way less on housing because housing is cheaper over here, but a little more on transportation because everybody got to drive. And if you're living like Alaska or Hawaii, this food and beverage number will go up. Okay, so it depends on where you are in the country. Those numbers will be different, but doesn't matter where you are. This three category, the biggest three category in the country. Okay, all right. Talk about this. Like that. All right, so CPI is not perfect. The number one problem for CPI is this substitution bias. Now, what that is, that means when the price change, consumer will find other alternatives. I mean, imagine this. Imagine you always like to use blue pen, right? And then imagine tomorrow the price for blue pen doubled, so getting more expensive. Now, what do? You wouldn't buy the blue pen anymore, and you buy the black pen. So you do change your behavior. So, but our CPI doesn't care about that. The key for CPI is that this quantity, it's supposed to be a Q, the quantity never change. So, so whenever we change our behavior, we don't buy the blue pen anymore. Our CPI still assume that we buy the same number of blue pens. So that's called a substitution bias. So it's not a, CPI, that's what we use for measurement of our inflation. So it's not perfect. And this is the biggest problem, that whenever our consumer change behaviors, CPI wouldn't care, okay? And then another one is called the introduction of new good. That whenever you have any new good that's introduced in the economy, CPI wouldn't capture that. So imagine that you want to find out how much is the cost of music from today compared to back to 1970s. Well, it's not that easy to compare because back in the old days, people are still buying like a records. People are still buying cassette, right? I mean, even if you compare it 20 years ago, yeah, 20 years ago, so back in 2000s or 1998, you know what people did back in those days? They buy CDs. I mean, how many of you guys bought a CD last year? Not that many, right? And think about it. How many of you guys bought a cassette last year? I don't think anybody had a cassette or anybody bought a record last year. Oh, you know what? About records, I did bought a lot of records last year. I didn't care about the music. I have the music on my phone. I don't care about the music. I don't care about the record itself. What I did care about, I care about the cover for the records. So I put the covers, I framed them, put it on the wall. It's really nice. Okay, so that's the only reason why I bought records. Now, why can we not compare between now and 20 years ago? Because there are new good introduced. I mean, how do we buy music now? iTunes, right, or your Spotify. So we buy our music digitally. So the way we spend our money is different now. So that's called introduction new good. So if you try to compare this between 2 years and between the old days and currently, because of new good, our CPI wouldn't care. Because really, if you try to compare, if you really try to do that, then you have to find out how much is the price of CD, how much is the price of cassette, how much is the price of record compared to like 1990s to today. Well, that wouldn't work anymore because we don't buy those good anymore. Okay, all right, and then next, it's something called unmeasured quality change. So this again goes back to this Q over here. That this Q never changed. Now, guys, I want you to think about the first car you own. Oh, you know what? Many of you guys are very young, so you wouldn't know. But ask your parents, like, what's the first car they own? Like, what year was it? Did their first car had a GPS in it, had an ABS brake in it? Did it have a power window, power lock? They had those parking sensors or those blind spot indicator. Now, more than likely, those cars wouldn't have it. Now, if you buy a new car today, they might have it. So if you compare the quality of the cars today compared to the quality of cars before, of course now it's better. So which means then you'll be paying a higher price for it, right? So you're buying a better car. That's why it's more expensive. But our CPI wouldn't care. CPI says you bought a car in 1995, you bought a car today in 2018. Well, the price is increased. That's inflation. Well, that's not so right because we did buy a better car now, right? So that's another reason why CPI can overstate inflation in the economy. Okay, all right. So those three problems are the problem for CPI. So CPI is not perfect. All right. So talk about this. Um, let's keep this part on the test. It's not really important. All right, so this part is important. You might see this on your quiz, on your homework, on your test. Okay, so it's you're gonna compare dollar value in different time. Let me give you guys a better formula. Yeah, don't copy this. Let me give a better formula. So it's the dollar value in time A divided by CPI in time A equals to dollar value in time B divided by CPI in time B. All right, so for this, we can just do a simple cross multiply, okay? And I believe the example question says in 1963, our minimum wage is $1.25, and then today minimum wage is $7.25, and then our CPI for 1963 was 30.9, 1963, and then CPI for today is 234.6. Yep, 234.6. 234.6. And then what we can do, we can either inflate or deflate these values between different years and then compare the values. Okay. So first, let's try this. We're going to try to inflate the value of 1963 to today's value and see how much that is. So the formula is going to do $1.25 divided by the CPI of 1963 equals to the dollar value for today divided by 234.6, which is the CPI for today. Now, we're going to do cross multiply. So once you finish, the dollar value for today is $9.49. Okay, so what that means your $1.25 in 1963 is actually more valuable, has more purchasing power compared to the minimum wage of today. Because back then that $1.25 is worth $9.49 today. Okay, so that's how you do it. And then guys, so make sure the most important part is to set up the cross multiply and then just solve for the missing variable. Okay, all right. Let's continue. You know what? Let's talk about this because this is in our textbook too. So we compare the cost of tuition between 1990s and 2013. So let me give you guys a story. So let me give you my own experiences. Okay. So when I started college back in '02, my first semester I took. By the way, I went to University of Houston. So my first semester, I took 12 credit hours. It cost me $1,500. Now my second semester, I took 18 credit hours. It cost me $2,100. So it was really really cheap before. I mean, if you take the same number of classes now at University of Houston, it will cost you close to 5,000, 6,000 per semester. So back then it was really cheap. Now there are different reasons why tuition is getting more and getting more and more expensive. But the most important reason why is that if you look at the tuition for public schools, public college has been increasing faster than the tuition for private college. And the reason why that is because the state of Texas and the state of your wherever you are has been decreasing their contribution to the public colleges. And then normally when you go to a public school, the reason why it's called public school because every public college is getting like a support from their state. So when you guys pay for tuition at a public college or public universities, how much you pay for tuition is only part of the total cost. The other part is being paid by the state of each individual college is. But for the last 15, 20 years, how much the state is paying for has been decreasing. So each individual state has been decreasing how much they're contributing to the universities. So that's why your tuition is very expensive. Okay, all right. Okay. Don't worry about this. That's not important. No, this is important. So the difference between a nominal interest rate and a real interest rate. So guys, imagine this. Imagine you go to Bank of America, and then Bank of America currently has an interest rate of 10% on your saving account. Now, would you do it? Would you invest your money? I mean, 10% sounds pretty good, right? Because 10% that means you deposit $1,000, and by end of the year you're gonna have extra $100. Or you deposit 10,000, by end of the year you're gonna have extra 1,000, right? That's 10% return. Now, that's a pretty good deal, but think about it. Under what condition you wouldn't do this? That you'd be like, oh man, only 10%. I mean, forget about that. I'm looking for a better deal. Let me give you a scenario. So imagine that when you have your money, when you earn your paycheck, the only thing you will buy is Whataburger. Okay. Now again, depends on where you are in the country. You might not heard of Whataburger before, but let me tell you what Whataburger is. So, heard about the In-N-Out Burger in California? So the In-N-Out Burger in California is like Whataburger in Texas. I mean, people here love Whataburgers. Okay, so imagine all you buy is Whataburger, and then let's suppose each meal at Whataburger is only like $8. So that's all you spend money for. So buying the meals at Whataburger, and then you spend $8 per meal. So let's suppose that between now and the end of the year, the price for Whataburger doubles. So instead of $8, you're going to pay $16. Now, if you save your money in the bank, it will only increase by 10%. Well, that's not good because if you save your money by end of the year, you can buy less Whataburgers, right? It's because the price of Whataburger increasing faster. So you had to care about what the hell is inflation. Oh, did I just curse? I'm sorry. So you had to care about what is inflation, because when you have inflation, it will eat away how much your interest rate is. So your nominal interest rate, that's how much the bank pays you. So 10%, 5%, and then currently 1%. Okay. So take that nominal interest rate minus inflation. Then what's left is called the real interest rate. And that's like your personal profit after inflation. So once inflation's taken away everything else, what's left over, that's your real interest rate. Okay, so notice the difference between nominal and real interest rate. All right, let me see what else to talk about. Oh, that's it. Okay, so guys, that's it for chapter 11. Have any question, let me know. Okay, so chapter 11 is not a hard concept chapter, but it just have a lot of calculations. Okay, so guys, be careful with calculations. Use Excel as much as you can, and have any question, let me know. All right, guys, see you later.